this giant Victorian house in a quiet neighborhood. We'd visit often, and sometimes I would even stay for the weekend. As a young kid, the house always kind of creeped me out. It was large and old, it creaked and made noises at all hours, so I always insisted on sleeping in Grandma's room with her. But as a teenager, I got my own room in her house, because I was there so often. In fact, out of all 6 of us grandkids, I was there the most. I had my choice of one of 7 other rooms, and I chose one on the opposite end of the hallway from her. It was close enough that I still felt safe, but far enough away to be independent. One summer, when I was 15, my parents were going away for 2 weeks on a business trip to meet some new investors, so I got to choose whether I stayed with my grandma or my Aunt Jill. I chose Grandma. She always made the best cookies and let me eat whatever I wanted. Aunt Jill was recently on a new health kick, plus it was the 10th anniversary of my grandpa's death, and even at 15, I understood how hard that would be, and I wanted to make sure she would be okay. We were in the kitchen eating pizza, my favorite food, when there was a loud crash in the pantry. Grandma opened the door and said, "Bruce, don't be rearranging everything on me again." And she turned to me and said, "Your grandfather likes to play tricks on me, even though he's been gone for 10 years. I laughed with her, not really sure how to react. My mom was always yelling at Grandma about talking to dead people. She would always say, "Mom, you know Dad died. He's in heaven, fishing and eating all the bacon he can. He's not in your pantry." Later, I was in bed, getting ready to sleep, and I heard talking down the hallway. I just smiled and tried not to be concerned that Grandma was talking to air. Whatever made her comfortable, I guess. It was sometime in the middle of the night when I was woken by air rushing into my room. Weird, I thought. I definitely didn't have the window open today. As I got up to shut it, I realized my phone was on the floor, so I bent down to grab it. And it was lit up, meaning my wallpaper was showing. It was a picture of my grandma and I on the backyard swing when I was about 4, with my grandpa in the background making bunny ears on us. I couldn't remember a lot about him since I was 5 when he passed away, but I did remember him always being goofy. Once the window was shut, I decided to head down to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was Grandma's one rule: no food or drink in the bedrooms, even a glass of water. As I lifted the glass of water to my lips, the cabinet door slammed shut. I jumped, screeched, and dropped the glass, shattering it. I heard Grandma moving around upstairs and felt bad for waking her. She never slept much to begin with. We cleaned up the glass while I told her what happened. "It's your grandpa, sweetheart, that prankster. You might not remember, but when you were all of 2 or 3, he used to play pranks on you. It was how you knew that man loved you," she said, smiling as she remembered. That was enough excitement for the night. As I lay there trying to get to sleep, I debated whether my mom was right that Grandpa was in heaven and that was that, or whether Grandma was right that Grandpa was the reason for all the weird things happening. The next day, we literally shopped until we dropped. It was something Grandma and I always did when I spent long periods of time with her. We would go to the flea market, thrift stores, bookstores, and then end up at the mall where we would have dinner and see a movie. After hitting the candy store, of course. When we got home, neither one of us had the energy to unload the car, so Grandma had the neighbor kids help. After my bath, I got into my pajamas and went to meet Grandma in the kitchen for our nightly bedtime cocoa, and then went to bed. I had no bedtime when I stayed with her, but I couldn't have stayed up past 10 that night if I had tried. I was sleeping so hard that when I was awoken by the crash in the kitchen, there was literally a puddle of drool on my pillow. "Ew," I said out loud. Slightly worried about Grandma, I hopped out of bed, into my slippers, and ran downstairs. But Grandma wasn't down there. It was dark except the night lights in the hallway and living room and the glow of the light above the stove. As I got closer to the kitchen, I froze in fear. All of the cupboards were open and the pots and pans were all on the floor. By this time, Grandma made her way down the stairs and to my side. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Floyd," she said. "Do you have to make a mess? And quit scaring Sarah." "Grandma?" I stammered. "Are you sure it's him? Why would he make a mess?" "Yes, dear, it's your grandfather, and he makes a mess just to get a reaction. The best thing to do is leave it until tomorrow morning. It drives him crazy. I don't even get out of bed now when I hear him moving things down here." And she did. She turned around to go back upstairs. "Come on, Ra, back to bed you go. Ignore your grandfather," she added, staring back at the kitchen. I couldn't believe it. She just left the mess. Even at 15, that was driving me crazy. I wanted to rush back down and clear it up. Over the course of the entire time I was there that time, so many things happened. On the date of his 10-year death anniversary, we went out and bought flowers to place on his grave. While we were at the cemetery, the pinwheels on his gravesite kept spinning like crazy, but the air was so still there was no way any breeze was moving them. And that same night, when bedtime came, we fell asleep in Grandma's room, watching old family movies. I was still on the fence about the paranormal, but I was opening up more to it. I woke up when the TV started making that terrible static noise that those old TVs used to make. I remember thinking to myself, thank God for technology advancements, because I don't know how my parents and my grandparents handled that all the time. Our old family movies, I guess you would call them, were all on VHS, so Grandma had an old TV and VCR in her room to watch them on from time to time. I shut the TV off, checked to make sure she was covered up, and headed to my room. About halfway down the hall, I heard a noise coming from one of the bathrooms. As I said, this house was huge. It had tons of rooms. Since I had to use the bathroom anyway, I headed towards it. It was almost as if it was calling me. I barely touched the door and it flew further open and hit the wall behind it. Shutting the door, I proceeded to use the restroom and wash up. I screamed when I glanced in the mirror and saw him. My grandpa. I was young when he passed, but I remembered his face, and had seen enough photos over the years. Grandma came rushing in, finding me on the floor. I was so scared I couldn't talk for a good 10 minutes. As we were sitting and sipping on chamomile tea, I finally got the words out. "Grandma, it was him. It was Grandpa. I saw him in the mirror. I thought you might be crazy, but you're not. He's here." This was already 6 years ago, and I've spent many more weekends there with Grandma. But I will never forget that weekend, because it was when I began believing in the paranormal. Wow, thanks Sarah, and thank you to your grandma also for allowing us to share your story. I actually find comfort when I get signs from my loved ones, and I hope it brings you some comfort too. Have you had a similar experience that you want to share? Email me at the address in the description below. With that, I'll see you tomorrow, friends.